or incited by radicals, these people would rise up to demolish the Russia they had suffered for in a fiery revolution that would replace one colossal empire with another.
Okay, so you got the gist of what ends up happening to the Russian Empire. We will go more into depth at that at a later date. But now we need to talk about the DBQ. Now, this is just going to be a real brief overview of the rubric, kind of get mentally prepared for what all this is. We're going to really break it down more in depth tomorrow, Monday and Tuesday. We're going to take little baby steps to get you ready, probably write the thing on Wednesday. That being said, I would highly encourage you to have your notebook out. That way you can write down just a few little tips. In this class, there are three types of writing that we do. We've done SAQs. Haven't done one for a while, but we got one coming up here pretty soon. We've done SAQs, the long essay questions. This is the last type of essay. This is a document-based essay, where a lot of the categories, like the point categories, are the same as your typical LEQ. The big difference here is you're going to be using 7 historical documents in your essay as evidence for your argument. Yes, 7. What's that? For one essay. Yes, sir. The documents are not that long. It's not like, a 3-page document each. Trust me, when you get a look at it, you'll see it's not quite as bad as you think. Now, these are difficult early on because of your time management and because of just having to read through all these documents before you ever start writing. That's the bad thing. The good thing is you don't necessarily need to know anything about the topic up front. By reading the documents and kind of breaking them down, that's ultimately what gives you what you need to answer the essay question. So let's look at the overall rubric. Again, first thing you'll notice, the point categories are a little bit different. Instead of 6 points to get that you have on an LEQ, you have 7 points. It's broadened a little bit on your DBQ. That being said, the first 2 point categories are the exact same, your thesis and your context. So first thing I'd write down, thesis and context, really these need to be in the introductory paragraph. Your context has to be there. It has to be right at the front. Your thesis could either be in the introduction or the conclusion. I'd probably put it in both. But getting that out of the way early on, it kind of gives you a roadmap for what you're writing about. For me, stylistically, I think it makes the most sense to start off with your context and then close out with your thesis. For example, let's talk about context. That's just background information. And that really should be 3-4 sentences, almost a full paragraph in and of itself. So next week, you're doing a DBQ over the Russian Empire. Think about the background information. You could talk about how originally Russia wasn't even a united country. It was a group of independent city-states like Novgorod and Kiev and Moscow. You could talk about how for many years the Mongols, the Tatars, ruled over them in a sort of tributary relationship. Then you can maybe write about how it all starts with Ivan the Great. He's the guy that rebels, defeats the Mongols, and establishes what will become the Russian Empire. That's your context. That's all it is. It's background information. And for each of your essays, that's the sort of stuff that you want to provide. Now, where people mess up on context is they are too vague. Russia wasn't originally an empire, but then they fought and became an empire. Okay, that's true, but there's nothing specific there. You need the details. You need the names. You need the ideas. You need specificity. That shows not only that you know what you're talking about, but it also informs me, the reader, okay, this is what's going on. Gets me ready to read the rest of the essay. Again, you got to assume I know nothing about what you're writing about, so you have to introduce it to me. Once you establish your context, then close that with your thesis. All that is your argument, the point you are trying to prove. If the essay topic was, explain how corruption led to the end of the Russian Empire, I don't know, I'm making that up. You would say, corruption was a big factor in the end of the Russian Empire because it caused this and this and this. Again, you're outlining what you're going to be writing about throughout the rest of the essay. Don't just restate the prompt. Okay, a lot of people, they'll just say, yeah, corruption caused the downfall of the Russian Empire. And the rest of the essay, I'm going to tell you why. It's not a thesis. You got to give me like a preview. You got to outline your argument and then spend the rest of the essay proving your argument. The good thing with the DBQ, you don't have to have your thesis as soon as you read the writing prompt. You honestly won't know because you're going to base your thesis on what's in the documents. And to elaborate on that, I'm going to show you a real deal DBQ. This is one that the kids had in 2017. This is actually from the AP exam. Now, when you get to the AP exam, this is kind of how it's going to look. And they've changed the times a little bit since then, but still the structure is very similar. You'll have like a little intro page with a bunch of stuff that's going to be overwhelming. You don't necessarily have to read over all this. It's just restating your rubric. That's pretty much all it is, and giving you your time limits and stuff like that. You really want to pay attention when you get to the prompt. Now, I will forewarn you, the prompt will always look really hard at first glance. They're trying to intimidate you. The College Board wants you to break down in tears and just break your pen. Yeah, you're already going to be there. You're already going to be stressed out. You're going to see this writing prompt and you're going to say, I'm done. But the writing prompt is always easier than it looks. They put it in highfalutin terms to intimidate you, but you got to outsmart it. So I'm going to read this writing prompt to you, and it's going to look scary, but it's really not that bad. And this obviously isn't over Russia. This is just a sample one we're going to work with tomorrow. But see if you can figure out what it's asking. Evaluate the extent to which religious responses to wealth accumulation in Eurasia in the period circa 600 BCE to 1500 CE differed from states' responses to wealth accumulation. You take a deep breath. Maybe you take two. You calm yourself down. Maybe 3 deep breaths. Maybe you say like a positive word of affirmation, like, I got this, I'm smart, I really am, I belong here. And then you break it down a little further. Me, if we actually had physical copies, and you will theoretically on the real test, I would circle the dates, start thinking, what do I know about that time period? I would underline maybe the geographic area. Oh, well, now it's just Europe and Asia. So that is further confining down what you know. Then I would look at the overall topic. Wealth accumulation. Guys, during this time period, trade is booming continuously. And anytime you have an increase in trade, you're going to have an increase in the number of people that got money in their pockets. That's your wealth accumulation. How did states respond to all these new people having money? How did religions respond? That is it. That's all they're asking. What did states do with all this new money that people were earning? What did religions do? Now, you don't know that. I mean, you may have some ideas, but you don't know. You're going to learn that by reading the documents. So you got document 1. You got document 2. You got document 3, 4, 5, 6. Hey, that's a picture. That's not too bad. And then 7. Now, one of the things that you'll find through reading the documents is you'll see some themes. You'll see some general ways that both governments and religions responded. One of the things you might see is, hey, most of these governments, they're increasing taxes because that's what governments do when people got money. Most of these religions, they're asking for donations. You now have an argument. You now have a thesis statement. You now have a sense of direction. So your thesis for this, and again, we'll go into this more in depth tomorrow, in the period of 600 to 1500, states and religions responded differently to the accumulation of wealth. Religious institutions typically advocated for more donations, whereas governments increased taxes. Boom, there's your thesis statement. And now you have an essay to write where you just break down the documents explaining how they increase their taxes and how they ask for donations. That is all it is. It takes a little bit to wrap your head around it, but I'm telling you, it is not as bad as you think. We're going to look at this one specifically tomorrow. We're going to do some things with it. If you can figure out this one, trust me, the one that you're going to do next week's pretty easy. All right, I don't know why I minimized this to the point that no one on earth could see it, but let's go ahead and maximize it. Okay, so you've got your first 2 point categories. You're not going to know your thesis until you read the documents, but you will get ideas as you go. The context you're going to want to read the documents first anyway, but you could have some ideas on it. Here's where it gets kind of weird. Evidence, how you get your evidence points is different. And it's all about, in these first 2, using the documents. You said that governments were jacking up taxes, and you said that religions were asking for donations. Well, throughout your essay, you have to describe each document and explain how that fits what you said, how that ties back to your thesis statement. Okay, so if you can do this and basically summarize at least 3 documents in a way that it supports your thesis, you get 1 point. If you can do it for 6 documents, you can get 2 points. Now, here's the deal. You're using the documents to prove that your thesis was correct. You can summarize them. You should summarize them to some extent, but do not quote. I've seen a lot of DBQs. In document 1, it says quotation, paragraph. In document 2, it says quotation, paragraph. No, that's not skill. That's just copying. You want to interpret the document. You can explain what one of these documents says in a sentence or 2. Okay, and if you explain it in such a way that it supports your thesis, boom, you've used that document. Notice you only have to do it for 6 documents to get full points. There's 7 total documents. There's always one that's a little weird that you got to be creative to figure out how to use. If you don't want to use it, you don't have to. That being said, if you can figure out a way to use it, please try to. Your next evidence point, this is where you got to actually know something. You got to know something outside the documents, okay? This is you providing at least one specific detail, one specific piece of evidence that's nowhere in the documents and explaining it. That's how you get that point. So let's say we're writing a whole essay on the Russian Empire, and you're describing all these documents and you're doing your thing, and they never even explain what serfs were, which serfdom went on for a long time in the Russian Empire. If you can find a way to integrate that in, hey, by the way, let's talk about serfdom, and you explain that, that would be an additional piece of evidence if it's nowhere in the documents. Again, this is the one part you got to kind of know a little bit extra. Now, this part's weird, and I'll be honest, we haven't done this nearly enough, so if you attempt it, I'll probably give you the point on this first one. For at least 3 documents, explain how or why the document's point of view, purpose, historical situation, or audience is relevant to an argument. Remember when we went over CAP long ago, and people were like, oh, no, what? CAP, context, audience, purpose, point of view. These are things to keep in mind when you're reading a document because they can shape, what's presented. An emperor's going to look at things a lot different than a slave. So how you do this is after you describe a document, you can say, hey, this document was written by Peter the Great, and he's talking about all the great things that he's doing. But considering he's the emperor, maybe he's not keeping in mind, how the peasants feel, that they're having to build St. Petersburg and they're literally breaking their backs. That's it. It is largely your opinion. It's you bringing up how some of these things may impact what's said. Again, on the first one, I want you to try it. I'll probably give you points just for the effort, but this is a skill that once you get it down, it's not bad because it's just your opinion. And then the final point category is the same as it's always been. It's the complex understanding point, the unicorn point. You need to go above and beyond. You want to use all 7 documents. You want to bring up more than just one additional piece of evidence. You really want to show the reader, which in this case is me, but ultimately it's going to be the College Board, that you know more than enough to write this essay. Okay, and they do go over some different ways you could do it, and we'll get into this tomorrow, but know that even those things, if you do them, are not automatic. You truly got to show you know your stuff. This rubric is up there. I didn't read it all word for word, so take a gander at it. Tomorrow, I'll review it very briefly. We're going to actually use this DBQ as practice. You're going to read through the documents. You're going to try to figure out what they're saying. You're going to look for some themes. You're going to try to craft a thesis. We'll figure out ways to group documents. Again, this will be some good practice, just kind of showing you the process. Then Monday and Tuesday, we'll work more specifically towards the actual essay you're going to write. Again, these are time consuming. They take a while to plan, but once you got your plan down, if you follow the appropriate steps that we will go over, the essay itself is not all that hard to write. Again, that DBQ essay is going to be your final test grade, or not your final test grade, your first test grade of the next 6 weeks.
Whoa,
Yeah, I know, it's wild.